The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
We start with Rick Perry, gone birther. David Corn's an MSNBC political analyst and Mother Jones Washington bureau chief. And we're also joined by Wayne Slater. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. Here's a portion of that Parade magazine interview, ran this Sunday. It's catching a lot of attention. In a Q&A in the article, Lynn Shure asks the governor some questions. Governor, do you believe that President Barack Obama was born in the United States? Perry responded, I have no reason to think otherwise. Sure, that's not a definitive yes. I believe he. Rick Perry, well, I don't have a definitive answer because he's never seen my birth certificate. Question, but you've seen his. Perry, I don't know. Have I? Question, you don't believe what's been released? Perry, I don't know. I had dinner with Donald Trump the other night. Question, and Perry, that came up. Question, and he said, Perry, he doesn't think it's real. Question, and you said, Perry, I don't have any idea. It doesn't matter. He's the President of the United States. He's elected. It's a distractive issue. Well, there we go. Rick Perry has ripped the scab off this issue by saying he doesn't really believe the president was born here. I want to go to Wayne Slater. What crowd is this guy back on his heels into double digits trying to appeal to?
You suggested it in the intro. And what part of the resurrection of the birther issue, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is going to cause him problems in western Iowa, in South Carolina, in the Redneck Riviera, in Florida? It's not going to cause him any problems at all.
Why not?
Well, because you basically what he's got to do is, as you know, appeal to those people who are not going to be with Romney. He's got to pull people away from Kane, so you do it with abortion. You got to pull people away from everybody else. And what you do is resurrect the crowd on the right. And that includes both the anti-abortion people, the anti-gay marriage people, but also the birthers, the birchers, the secessionists, the militia. Basically, the marginalia of the religious right and social right in the Republican Party. Dave Carney and the Rick Perry team believe that mathematically that is their only way. If they can coalesce all these disparate interests who are not the Mitt Romney folks, and there's no better way to do that than fall under the spell of the Donald and to start talking about birtherism.
Well, let's go to David Corn on that because it's a hoot. I mean, he's treating Donald Trump like some sort of figure who can verify the truth on matters political. I mean, the guy showed us his birth certificate. It was embarrassing enough that President of the United States has to show his papers like he's being stopped at a checkpoint. But to do it and then have somebody who's actually a governor of a state saying, I don't really believe this guy's papers. What's he think? He's an illegal alien? Does he think he's one of these guys he calls aliens? He ought to be illegals? Because that's what he's saying. If he wasn't born here and he never went through naturalization or went through any kind of green card process, he is here illegally. It's one or the other. And here's the guy making the charge. He might be the other.
Well, with Rick Perry, we see him today going for both the flat tax and this flat earth theory. He just, the Republicans can't escape the gravitational pull of profound anti-Obamaism. Every time this gets knocked away, somebody comes along and suggests, wink, wink, nod, nod, as Wayne just said, that maybe there's still something to this story. Donald Trump was out there last week, too, with Michelle Bachmann holding a teller town hall in which he was going on not so much of birtherism, but other things, other conspiracy theories about the war in Libya. And so I don't know what magnetic pull he has on these far-right candidates. I mean, this is a guy, actually, who was more a Democrat a few years ago than a Republican, but they just can't resist the lure of Donald Trump or the lure of Obama the other, Obama the alien, whether it's birtherism or whether it's the fact that he doesn't like this country, he's not truly an American. They just can't let that theme go because it's just too powerful for too much of their base.
What's really humiliating here is a guy who's elected by the people of Texas. For whatever you think of his politics, he's an elected official of a major state. He goes trooping up to New York mentally, not just physically, but mentally treating Donald Trump as the guy who decides what the truth is on whether the President of the United States is an American or not, an American-born American. I mean, why would he treat Trump as his expert? Why would he look up to those big, tall buildings in New York with such profound humility as to think that one of the guys who built one of those high buildings knows more about Barack Obama's legitimacy as an American than he does? And that's my question to you, Wayne. Why is he so intellectually humble as to bow before Donald Trump and say he's my expert on whether a person's an American or not, including the president? Why does he do that?
Because, yeah, look, we all saw what happened to Donald Trump for a couple of weeks. The moment that he both disgraced himself by talking about birtherism, but in the opening couple of weeks made himself a skyrocket, rocketed to the top of consideration among the folks on the far right. Perry sees that as an opportunity. Look, they understand very well that Mitt Romney is topped out, they believe, around 25–30%. All they have to do is coalesce other folks around him. And those folks, those most active constituents who are going to show up at the caucuses in Iowa, who are going to show up in South Carolina, are exactly the people who still think that Obama is the other, and who still think that as extraordinary as this may seem, you go out there and talk to folks, that Donald Trump is a kind of sage and expert who will talk directly to people. I know, talk directly to people and say the truth.
Okay. I mean, when I went to New York the first couple of times, and I still do this as an out-of-towner, I do look up at the tall buildings. But I do realize the people in New York are no different than the rest. They do have bigger money in some cases, but the idea that they're sharper, low. Let's take a look. Here's here, by the way, since the president released his long-form birth certificate out of Hawaii, the number of Republicans who believe he was born outside the United States has dropped. But, and here's the huge B-U-T but, still more than 1 in 5, almost 1 in 4 believe he was born in or could have been born in another country. 23% think he's definitely or probably born in another country. I mean, another country. Nobody can figure out the physical nature of how he did all this trick. He's some sort of reverse Houdini that come from somewhere else. 43% are willing to say, David, that he was born here. It's just, Chris, to me, profound. I'm sorry, 40-some%.
This gets to a heart of a big problem in our political discourse, which is evidence, facts don't matter. People respond to a question like that based on what they feel, what they hope, rather than what the evidence is before them. There's no reason for anyone to believe that, let alone 23% of the Republican Party. It is a measure of their profound antipathy towards the president that they believe. You know, ask them if he's a Muslim. Ask them if they believe that there's a satanic agenda to what he's doing, and you'll probably get between 10 and 25%. And that's, you know, at the beginning of this race, you and I talked about this, that there was a block of Republican primary voters who wanted someone out there who they could relate to emotionally with the anger they had towards Obama. You know, Mitt Romney isn't that guy, let alone the positions, whether he's conservative enough, whether he's flip-flopped or not. He doesn't feel their anger. And Michelle Bachmann, Donald Trump, Herman Cain, Rick Perry, they've all tried to capitalize on that. No one has done it, you know, in a sustainable way yet. And now here comes Rick Perry again for the second bite at that poisonous apple.
Well, let's take a look at the latest poll numbers that explain Rick Perry's desperation here, his desperado move here of going back to birtherism here. He's been dropping. I've never seen a candidate drop, I don't think, this fast in a long time. The latest CNN opinion research poll, he's dropped nearly 20 points since just last month. Cain has picked up all those 20 points. This must drive him crazy, Wayne. Here's a guy with no political background, obviously a smart guy with no political baggage at all. And here's a guy who's been governor of the big state of Texas all these years, good-looking guy, younger, healthier probably than Mr. Cain, and yet Cain is eating his lunch.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be serious, it doesn't just drive Rick Perry crazy. It drives Anita Perry crazy, and she is the one person who can talk to the governor. I'm serious. And she talked to the governor just recently and said, you got to do something about this. She's very, very unhappy with the trajectory of the campaign, as anybody would be, and they are making changes. That's why we have seen Nelson Warfield and others being brought in, and as of today, Rick Perry has personally, after Anita talked to him, Anita Perry, his wife, talked to him, called Joe Albaugh, who ran the operation, be sure the trains ran on time, the organization of George Bush 11 years ago in the 2000 presidential race, and asked Albaugh to come on board and take over the campaign, which he is going to do.
Said the other day that there is such a thing. It exists. The original document of his birth is available in storage. They have it in storage, they say. Well, and if it exists, why not put it out? I'm just asking the obvious question, why not? Will there be any harm done by releasing the original document?
I would take the brave position of saying that if they can find it, they should put it out there, and then we can make even more fun of the birthers.
I'll take the brave position of saying, yeah, put it out there, and the birthers are still not going to believe it. They're going to say, well, that governor is part of the conspiracy, too, because he's a Democrat.
And why did it take so long?
The question of Obama's birth, where he was born, is an important question. But the more important question is whether or not he is a natural-born citizen because he was born in Hawaii. The conventional wisdom is that if he could produce a birth certificate showing that he was born in Hawaii, that would make him a natural-born citizen. That's not true. That only makes him a citizen by birth. And there's a distinction between the two terms. A citizen by birth is a person who becomes a citizen because he was born in the geographical limits of the United States, and he was here lawfully, or his parents were here lawfully, and therefore by birth he's a citizen. Now that's because in the first sentence of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, it states specifically that a person who is born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen. Now, most people think that's a definition of a natural-born citizen, but people forget that that was put into the Constitution not for the purpose of defining what a natural-born citizen is as it applies to the President of the United States, but it was placed in the Constitution for the specific purpose of declaring that people who were part of the newly freed slave class were citizens of the United States and of the state in which they resided, because the United States Supreme Court had ruled in the Dred Scott case that a person who had been brought over to the United States against his will could never become a citizen of the United States, much less a citizen of the state. So the place of birth that gives rise to citizenship by birth was addressed to the question of what to do with this entirely new group of people who would otherwise be stateless because they couldn't, under the Dred Scott rule, become a citizen having been born in the United States. Now, natural-born citizen in relationship to the office of president and whether someone is eligible was in the Constitution from the very beginning. The 14th Amendment definition of citizenship by birth was not addressed at all to the question of one qualification to run for President of the United States. Even the language is different. It talks about a natural-born citizen. Well, what is a natural-born citizen? Well, another way of putting it is there is a law of the nature of citizenship. If you're a natural-born citizen, you are a citizen according to the law of nature, not according to any positive statement in a constitution or in a statute, but because of the very nature of your birth and the very nature of the of nations and your relationship to the nation as a citizen. So what you have to do if you want to find out whether someone's a natural-born citizen is go back and look at what the law of nature would be or would require in order to be a citizen by birth. And that's precisely what a natural-born citizen is one who is born to a father and a mother, each of whom is a citizen of the United States or whatever other country that they're claiming natural-born citizenship in. Now, what we've learned from the Hawaii birth certificate is that Mr. Obama's father was not a citizen of the United States. His mother was, but he doesn't qualify as a natural-born citizen for the office of presidency.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.